All right, a lot of changes we could see at quarterback across the league. We got Pete Prisco, Brady Quinn still here, and we're joined by Will Brinson. My first time working with Brinson here, so I'm expecting a good time.
You're for a real treat.
Oh,
Yeah.
Too bad for you.
Okay, well, thanks for hanging out this year. So we're going to play a little bit of a game of matchmaker. We're going to talk about some of these big names, where they could land, and we're starting off with none other than Aaron Rodgers. The Sportsline odd makers, they have Aaron Rodgers saying if he doesn't play with the Packers in Week 1 in 2023, the team with the shortest odds to land him, the New York Jets at plus 100. Will, we'll let you go first. Do you agree with that? Do you see Aaron Rodgers with the Jets?
Yeah, I kind of look at this quarterback carousel a lot like I look at the desk you guys are sitting at right now. There's one guy who's clearly washed up and he needs to walk away. I think we can all sort of pinpoint who that guy is, right?
Brady, don't let him talk to you like that.
And one guy who needs to just call it quits and walk away. It's time for Aaron Rodgers. He's washed. He's finished. He needs to walk away, Pete.
He's washed up? Are you crazy? I mean, that's the dumbest thing he said. He said a lot of dumb things in his life. I mean, that's really bad. He's not washed up. Is he going to the Jets? This is a hard thing to do because of his contract. It means you have, if he gets traded, it's going to be later in the offseason. It can't be now. I don't think they trade him. I think he goes back.
So Woody Johnson owns the Jets, right? Is that of Johnson & Johnson, Sam? I mean, is there any issue there,
Where
Will?
are you going? Where are you going?
Well, I'm just saying.
Where are you going? I'm getting away from this one. I'm getting away from this one.
What? I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, could there be some friction there? I don't know. Immunized, not immunized? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Just so you know, that was a bit, I think, just to mess with Pete. Rodgers isn't retiring. I think here's the Jets. I think it's a good landing spot. Although your point about Johnson & Johnson is an interesting one, Brady.
Can I throw out one team? Because it seems like, and you said this earlier, if Purdy wins and plays well this week in the championship weekend, that's the guy they're going to go up next year. I mean, obviously he's under contract. He's on his rookie deal. What about the 49ers? They tried to make a run at him last offseason. It fell through. I think more on the part of the Packers. And you've got Jimmy Garoppolo's going to be a free agent. How do you look at Trey Lance and all this? Either way, if you can get Rodgers in San Francisco, to me, it gets you the Super Bowl you want. I know it's the contract, but they'd figure out a way maybe of making that work, or maybe Rodgers would be willing to figure it out.
I mean, look, that would be great for Rodgers. He's from there. He's from that area. It would be great for him, but I just think the contract is too prohibitive. And by the way,
you listened to him on the Pat McAfee show talk about that he would potentially look at.
Who's giving up 2 1s for him when it might be a 1-year rental, by the way? That's risky.
Might be.
I don't think it costs that much to get Rodgers. I mean, like the Packers and the Rodgers did that deal and built the contract and the options in, so that way, if it came to the point where he wanted to leave Green Bay or he wanted to retire, that there would be an availability for them to trade him fairly easily. Like that, the big bonuses don't kick until later, so they can trade him.
It's not easy. It's not easy to trade him.
It's not easy, but I mean, you know,
it's a lot of money. I mean, it's
the question
$60
is, if
million.
you're the Green Bay Packers, do you really want to be the team that trades him away and potentially in your own conference where you'd watch him come back and beat you? Which is why the Jets makes more sense. You've heard Woody Johnson talk about it. We're willing to pay whatever. So that had to be music.
This is all posturing by him to get his buddies back in the locker room. He wants Bakhtiari back. He wants Randall Cobb back. He wants Mercedes Lewis back. Come on, that's what he wants.
That may be the case, but the reality is I think he'll end up staying or coming back. I can't imagine them dealing him some way.
Yeah, so we have potential landing spots for Aaron Rodgers, Jets, Niners, maybe the Packers staying there. Moving along to Tom Brady, his last press conference with the Bucs was a little ominous. It seemed like he was saying his goodbyes to Tampa Bay there. Is he going to retire? Is he not? What's he going to do? We've heard rumors about him potentially going to Las Vegas. Will, how likely do you think it is that he sticks in Tampa Bay, or sticks with him, I should say, or does he go to the Raiders?
Good call not calling that press conference emotional, because Pete would have gotten mad at you. You're going to get emotional with the media. I think the Raiders are the obvious landing spot here. You got Josh McDaniels, you got Devontae Adams. You have you go to a different conference. You go to a city that's in Vegas that is high profile. Brady wants to play in an offense he's comfortable with a coaching staff he's familiar with, and it checks every box. I think the only reason, whatever happened with the Dolphins last offseason, and then the ensuing hire of Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa playing well, sort of quashed that with Stephen Ross being desperate to get his Michigan guy in there. Vegas is just a clear-cut, obvious option here, I think.
By the way, speaking of emotion, he'd be replacing the most emotional quarterback in the league, the guy who cried after a game. So that
Kardashians.
Yeah, I mean, it would work for him. I think he's going to the Raiders if he plays. I really do. I think it makes sense. If Sean Payton were to come back, I think there's a chance they would link up, but I think this is mostly going to the Raiders. He's got a number one wide receiver he could play with there, and he knows Josh McDaniels very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing you could imagine is, does he come back to Tampa? You know, does he decide with Byron Leftwich not being there? You know, it didn't sound like they necessarily had the greatest rapport throughout the course of the season. He didn't like the play calling. If they happen to hire someone that Tom Brady's a fan of, maybe that's a potential destination. I think the other wild card is he's got a great relationship with Mike Vrabel. And if you look at the Tennessee Titans, that's the division that you might look at and say it's winnable. Maybe he goes there, but I mean, based on how the last 2 years have gone, he's thrown more passes than he's ever had in his career.
Right.
I don't think he wants to go to Tennessee and sit and turn around and hand the football off to Derrick Henry the entire time.
No.
So.
All right, so moving along to one of the biggest question marks at quarterback, Lamar Jackson. We've heard Harbaugh and then Eric DeCosta saying very publicly in their end-of-season presser, we'd love to make things work, have Lamar as our quarterback. Will, how much do you believe that, and are you confident that there's going to be a deal between the Ravens and Lamar Jackson?
I think actually I'm at the point where I don't care. I don't care what the Ravens or Lamar wants. I just want Lamar Jackson in a Falcons uniform. Like, I mean, I harken back to like watching Michael Vick in that Falcons uniform. I can't remember what week it was and what year it was exactly, but I remember he like floated against the Panthers when like a Monday night one time. I mean, and I think Lamar, just for the nostalgic purposes, I think, and you look at, Arthur Smith's offense would be pretty good fit there for Lamar as well. And assuming you keep Kyle Pitts and all the other, younger pieces in there, I think it makes a lot of sense. Jason Lockenfora pointed out on the Pick Six podcast this week that the Ravens are really cornerback like hungry, and so maybe you send AJ Terrell back to Baltimore in exchange for Lamar instead of having to give up a bunch of ones. I think that's a really interesting idea. Although obviously Baltimore would prefer to get him under contract.
I think they're going to get him under contract. I think it's a tough negotiation. You're negotiating against him. And I know this. I've talked to people in that building. That's a tough deal because if you get the contract that's favorable to the team, you took advantage of him. If he gets a contract that's favorable to him, then he took advantage of you because you're too nice because he was negotiating against you. So it's a tough negotiation. I think ultimately they'll get it done. His initial request was absurd. He wanted Deshaun Watson's guaranteed contract. They're not giving him that deal. Nobody's getting that deal. It was a one-off that everybody in the league was angry about. If they give him the deal where he's one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid aside from that, with the guaranteed money being not what it is for him, then I think they get the deal done.
Yeah, if I was him at this point, I'd try to look for a shorter term, more fully guaranteed. It's not going to, eclipse what Deshaun Watson was able to get, but if you could find a way of creating a value like Aaron Rodgers did in his deal with the Packers in that little 3-year deal he signed, that'd be a way of kind of making all parties happy. They don't have necessarily the long-term commitment, but it's a lot of capital in a short period of time, which would please him, considering that's really the only route this can go is multiple franchise tags. So for me, I think he's going to end up being.
And get him some help. I mean, come on, build the offense
around him. They got a new offensive coordinator.
Right, build the offense around them.
All right, Pete Prisco, Brady Quinn, and also Will Brinson joining us here on HQ to talk about the NFL quarterback carousel. If you want to hear more Will Brinson, you can catch him on.
Well, he's got time later on today, too.
Oh, okay, perfect. So he's on the Pick Six podcast, squeezing that in between his tea time there, talking about their AFC and NFC Championship weekend bold predictions, and also talking about the whole baked potato situation in KC. If you haven't seen the picture, you should look it up, Pete.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.